A real danger when working remotely is being forgotten, being left out of the loop, not being communicated to on key projects, and even being the first person to let go in a business downturn. Instead, you can use remote working to increase your visibility, increase your promotion potential, and also increase your productivity and connection to your colleagues. Welcome back to my show where you get productive, get promoted, and get the corner office. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel because each and every week on Wednesday, I release a new strategy to help you accelerate your career results. When people don't hear from you, they begin to fill in the blanks themselves, and this can lead to a lot of paranoia, and it can ultimately put your job on the chopping block because people don't see your productivity and the contribution that you're making. Working remotely can lead to a lot of paranoia, and rightly so. I have one client who did a great job of keeping their manager, their boss, updated on what they were doing. Their boss and he were completely in sync. And then his boss left. That's right. His boss had an opportunity at a different organization. A new boss came in and everyone was like, hey, what is he doing? What is Jim doing? And this is a scary place to be because if people don't understand the contribution, they don't understand the value that you're adding, it doesn't position you for long-term acceleration and growth in your career. And in a business downturn, it can make you very vulnerable. Now, a different story is my story of a client who was getting left off of emails and specific meeting invitations. People didn't even really recognize that he was being left off, and he didn't know. He was completely out of the loop on key projects. Then he began to apply some of these strategies that I'm going to share with you today, and he was ultimately getting too included. He was getting copied in and included on a lot of stuff. He was really kept in the loop though, and he was able to leverage these to add more value in his current position, which ultimately led to his promotion while working remotely. So let's dig into 5 quick tips to help you as a remote worker not be forgotten and help you become visible for the right reasons. Tip number 1 is to share your weekly highlights. This is one of the big strategies that every employee can benefit from, is to summarize in just a few bullets, preferably 3, what are the 3 big achievements or accomplishments of the week, and then forward them out to your inner circle or to your boss or the colleagues you work with so they're aware of what you're doing. In fact, when my client started to implement this strategy, his boss actually said that he looked forward to that because it was like watching the ESPN top 10 highlights of the week, and it was a lot of fun and enjoyable and kept him attuned to what was going on in his sphere. It also gave the manager ways to help support his team to get more results. Tip number 2 is to over communicate. Now, if you think you're over communicating, you're probably not. That's one of the key messages from the CEO Sessions podcast, where I interviewed Chief Communications Officer from Lockheed Martin, Dina Costa. And he said, Ben, this is where people make so many mistakes. They feel like they're over communicating in a virtual world or when they're working remotely, and they're 9 times out of 10 not communicating enough. So when we talk about over communicating, let me break it down for you in a little more detail. First piece of over communicating is making sure you share good news and you share it quickly. A lot of times people hold back because they feel like they're boasting, or they're afraid that if they share good news and something down the road happens that's not great or that's negative or doesn't work out, it's like, well, man, at least I didn't put my head up too high and declare victory too soon. However, I find that in a virtual world, it's important to keep people apprised of the momentum you're generating so they can get on board and ultimately align to those actions and support those positive things with even more momentum to ensure their success down the road. The other piece is to follow up with the 1, 2, 3 combination, kind of like in boxing. So when you share good news, share it in email, share it in instant message, and share it in a text or phone call. This 1, 2, 3 combination ensures that they're getting the message. So you may say, Ben, this is going to be terribly annoying. Well, who doesn't like hearing good news? And don't just assume someone's reading your email and understanding it. You may need to communicate it from different mediums. Third way to over communicate in a positive way is after a meeting to make sure that you're documenting in an email the key takeaways and the key actions. So many times in a virtual world, when it comes to remote working, people forget about taking notes. And so what happened was not captured. And it's a unique time, right? When you're in a meeting and you're and you're in person, it's harder because oftentimes you're taking notes on a piece of paper or you're taking mental notes and afterwards there's no record of it. But in the virtual world, you can actually take notes during the meeting and send those out within minutes after it ending. And that's a great way to communicate next steps, takeaways, and make sure that the meeting gets traction for future positive results. Another way to communicate in an effective way is to forward emails that need to be communicated. Maybe it's a news alert, or maybe it's an email from a key supplier or customer. Make sure that you're adding a sentence or two of value. A few other key ideas is to be brief. Even though you're communicating more frequently on messages and from different mediums, there's no substitute for being brief. A mentor told to me years ago, Ben, it's up to you to make sure they understand, meaning that all these communication strategies that you're using that may come across as over communicating in some ways, you're trying to get your point across the way and they understand. So nothing is quite as important when it comes to communication in asking them to repeat back what you communicated or asking them a question that will let you know that they understood what you said. And if they didn't, the good news is there's time. You can try again and make sure that the communication linkage happens. Number 3 is to clarify how you want your team to communicate with you. I had a client years ago who said, Ben, my team is emailing me at all hours of the day and night and just overloading me with lots of information. And I just asked, did you share with them how you want to be communicated to? And then I got silence because most leaders never take that step. They just assume that the team is going to understand how they want to be communicated to effectively. So for you as a leader to increase your productivity and effectiveness working from home, when and how do you want them to share with you what they're working on? This can significantly reduce the emails that you receive if you ask for a summary and not all this information being bombarded with. And you maybe have some team members who aren't actually providing you any summary and you're left guessing what they're doing, trying to fill in the gaps on that. Another way that you need to clarify for communication is how do they need to communicate urgent issues to you? If you give them a direct line of how you want to be communicated to on an urgent issue, for example, by text, you will significantly reduce your email traffic on urgent issues. And you'll also sleep better at night knowing that you don't have to be on your email around the clock, that it'll be a text if that's something that's really important for your team. Number 4 is to clarify what your manager's expectations are for communicating with them. What's urgent to them? What's most important? How do they want to be kept in the loop on what you're doing? We've already suggested in step 1 to make sure that you're communicating your weekly highlights. That should be a non-negotiable. You want to make sure you're getting that to them. But all the other aspects of the business, how do they want to be communicated to? If you can do that, you're going to make sure that you're being visible to them for the right reasons instead of the wrong one. Number 5 is to maintain a casual communication connection, the CCC, the casual communication connection. When you're working remotely, you don't have the coffee pot or the water cooler to just have casual conversations and check in. And so when you're working virtually, it's extremely important that you create these moments. And it can even be via instant message or text. We're just checking in with your team periodically. And then also scheduling a time to just have a casual conversation with your team, or even declaring for your team that the first 5 to 10 minutes of your weekly staff meeting, you want to keep it based on a personal connection and not professional, and watch how that creates positive visibility and connection with your team. And when you do that, it creates all the other interactions that you have that are more geared towards the professional side, easier to handle. The good news is today is you don't have to apply all 5 of these strategies. And in fact, if you just apply 1 or 2, you're going to significantly increase your positive visibility working remotely with your team, your manager, and your overall organization. You can even apply these strategies with your suppliers and customers. In fact, the highlights can be helpful for your customers. I had a client who works virtually, and his clients often don't see him in person. And it's often easy for them to forget the positive contribution that he's making to their bottom lines. And so by sending these periodic highlights and highlighting his great work that he and his team are doing for the client, has actually strengthened the relationship and even led to increased revenues for them and improve efficiency and effectiveness for his clients. So your next step is to apply one of these strategies and notice the impact that it's making for you and your workday. So if you're the kind of high achiever that wants to get more from their workday, wants to become even a higher achiever, more productive, making a positive impact in your career and in your organization, and make sure you stick around for the next video.